I'll get on it. All right, shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Councilmember Thompson.
Here.
Emerling Baker. She's working on it. Okay, Farrell. Here. Appy.
Here.
Keller.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Mayor Fallon. Here. Okay, additions or amendments to the agenda?
I would just like to, under city meeting, be able to give you a brief description of this page that I distributed with the museum operation.
You said city committees?
Well, I'm leaving this on.
Okay, yeah, I didn't quite hear.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
put you in like 7C.
no, I'm just saying.
7A.
7A, it'd be the museum.
Okay. 7A, perfect. Okay. Adoption of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
A second. Discussion. All right, roll call vote. Councilmember Compton.
Aye.
Farrell. Aye. Kathy.
Aye.
Keller.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Mayor Fallon. Aye. Then is Denise on yet?
Nope, not seeing an invite. She's saying it's not working. I'm not,
I'll let you troubleshoot.
I don't know.
Is there anybody else on?
Yeah, we have 4 other people on, yeah.
All right, public hearing,
No public hearing.
okay, on the action items. On a second reading and approval of ordinance number 457, removing and hauling of garbage and refuse.
All right, at the June 12th council meeting, ordinance 457 was sent to council for a first read and approval. Council voted on the ordinance, however, it did not pass unanimously and now requires a second read and vote. This vote does not need to be unanimous for it to pass. So I will read the ordinance in title in full, as well as the 3 major changes to the ordinance. Ordinance number 457. An ordinance relating to the keeping, removing, and hauling of garbage and refuse in the city of Cascade lots, providing rules and regulations governing the hauling, collection, and disposal of garbage, refuse, and other solid wastes. Authorizing the city council to grant an exclusive contract for collection of solid waste, providing a method for establishing of rates therefore, providing penalties, and repealing ordinance number 315 and all amendments thereto. The 3 major changes are section 2, specifically section 2I indicates garbage containers provided by the collection will be provided by the collection contractor and removes any confusion on who is providing the cans. So the contracted collection provider cans, not privately owned cans. Section 10, change of language from a 5-year to a 10-year contract. A rolling contract, and then section 17, addition of force majeure language, which was requested by the contractor. So at this point, council can approve it, recommend changes, or reject.
Can you,
So there would be a motion and a second, then we would go into discussion.
I guess, do we want to, can we, I guess, should we wait till after there's a motion before we get to the discussion?
Yes. And so motion, a second, if there is, and then discussion about it.
I move to adopt, the ordinance number 457, removing the hauling of garbage buckets. A second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, Councilman Jackie.
I just want to make sure that we have done everything that's required according to the charter. So it says that an ordinance shall be fully and distinctly read in an open council meeting on 2 different meetings before being adopted by the council. And an ordinance be adopted at a single meeting by unanimous vote, which we know it didn't. But 2 readings by title only or in full shall occur, and Any section of proposed ordinance containing substantive change shall be read in full prior to consideration, which is what the ordinance did, correct? And a reading of an ordinance may be by title only if no member of the council president of the meeting requests that the ordinance be read in full. Do we have a requirement to read the ordinance in full? I just want to make sure we're not gonna.
And my understanding, no.
And so we have a copy of the ordinance provided to each member of council, at least 1 week prior to the reading.
Yep.
Yeah, copies of the ordinance are available for public inspection in the office of the city recorder.
Yep.
And notice of the availability and the title page of the ordinance is posted at City Hall.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilor Miller?
Okay, if this ordinance passes, we have a problem with section 4 or section 32(4), which was the last section. Councilmember Happy didn't read, and it says after January 1st, 2008. Any such ordinance or resolution or order approved by a majority of council that creates or increases any tax, charge, or fee, the ordinance shall not be effective unless ratified by a majority vote of the city's qualified electors. Voting in an election where at least 50% of the registered voters cast a ballot, where the election is a general election in an even numbered year. Okay. First off, council created this order or ordinance. It was not brought to council by any member of the, or any voter. It was not brought to council by whatever garbage service. It was created here in council. Okay. And this is not a rate. This is a charge, because we are charging $4 to pay for the new roll cards. This charge remains indefinitely to cover the replacement costs. You are requiring citizens to replace their perfectly good garbage cans with roll cards. It doesn't matter what sort of loopholes of semantics you play with this. It is not a rate, which assigns it, because a rate assigns a price for services rendered. This is a charge to buy new roll cards and replacement costs. Now we should look at the word shall in 4. Shall is used in this section as an imperative command, indicating that certain actions are mandatory. And that an action is referring in this ordinance to the voter's ratification. City Attorney Cleveland last meeting stated, council has the authority to interpret the language of their charter or ordinance if it doesn't go against the plain language of the charter or ordinance. The plain language of this section mandates that this ordinance be referred to the voters. That's all I got.
Okay.
Can I address some of your issues? That I was thinking about this quite a bit today. And that I kept coming back to, council changed the wording in the ordinance. And the wording is provided to the garbage company, which is coming back to us and saying, in providing this rate to us. The council isn't saying we want this rate. We are saying we want a more efficient system of hauling trash, one that benefits the community, like the environment of the community, and one that provides more safety to the gentlemen that pick up our trash. And so we changed the wording, and the wording therefore is reflected in the rate. And I took what Senator Cleveland said as the council established the definition of rate. And that is what it has been done in the past.
Well, I don't believe this is the rate.
Oh, okay, so that's you, that you're, any other, Councilor Keller?
I just want to go back to what our city attorney Cleveland brought up at the last council meeting. He did specifically say business activity versus government activity. Business activity is a rate structure. So again, it's even if it was something that was in our purview and we were assessing this, it would be considered business activity. And just like adjusting our rates for electricity, we're not sending that to the voters to approve. It's business activity, and there is a distinction and a difference. I'm not disputing what it said in the charter. I totally and fully agree with you. I think we tend to have a disagreement is what is whether this is a tax charge or fee, and you're saying it's a charge and it's not a rate. And I think that's debatable and understandable, but I don't agree.
Well,
You,
the reason is a charge instead of a rate is because you are forcing the populace to buy these roll cards. You know, because the service doesn't work without the roll cards. So they have to get rid of their perfectly good garbage cans, and you are forcing them to buy these roll cards. That's what the $4 is for. That's a charge. That's not a rate.
Councilman Miller, I think you've said that in your first go around, but in any other statements? Or,
I wanted to just address your saying the plain language of things and in my, this plain language, not looking at a law dictionary or anything, a charge to me is a one-time thing. It is a charge. A rate is something that generally is ongoing, and this will be ongoing. And regardless of, and it's in like a tax in this situation would be more equivalent to that, but it's not a tax because we're not collecting this money. So it would go back to that business thing. And I just don't see where it could be a charge. And also, I don't know about everybody else's trash cans, but I know mine in particular is not perfectly working order, but it wouldn't be terrible to have something that's not the citizens' responsibility to maintain, because right now it's their responsibility to maintain. Snowplow comes, destroys your trash can, that's your fault for leaving it out on the curb. And for any number of reasons, wind blows it over and it is in the river. It is your responsibility to take that, and littering, because you would be responsible for having your trash spill out everywhere. Not that we necessarily charge people and for littering because their trash can't go over, but it's not infeasible. So doing all this would limit that.
Councilman Farrell, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to reiterate if this was a clear cut, no issue, voting one way or the other. Our attorney would not have said that it's possible for somebody to take us to court. So there is that, and he came right out and said that it could be challenged in court, so. I just want to remind everybody about that.
Right, to hang on one sec, to comment on that, because I asked him, I said, isn't it true that at any time, anybody can try and sue us for just about anything, and he said, that's true. So he didn't, he was very clear, it's how the council decides to interpret it. And that's part of the challenge with a lot of stuff, because it leaves some gray areas, but he said it's up to council. So, Councilman, happy?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. All right, and then Tiffany, you wanted to talk on number 6? Name and address.
Tiffany Pruitt, Cascade Locks. So the $4 a month, it is an improvement fee because as has been stated, we can keep our trash can that we have now, and you're requiring us to improve something that already works. Because we can have our trash can picked up, now, we can have our trash picked up now without having to pay the $4 more. So it is an improvement fee, and skedaddling around the wordage, trying to make it so that we're tiptoeing around the amendment into the charter doesn't make it right. I mean, we can sidestep that it is a tax charge or fee. It is a charge. We're going to be charged $4 more a month because you are requiring us to improve our trash can service and to pay for trash cans, which I beg to differ, will require us to be maintained because we will have to keep them clean. That's part of the contract. That's part of having these new trash cans. We will have to keep them clean. So there will be some maintenance on the citizens' part. As I said in my email, you know, it seems problematic to approve the ordinance, making waste management invest in the money into the infrastructure and it's not just cans, it's also a truck, because they're going to be getting a new truck to be able to service our area. Only for there to be a potential lawsuit. The attorney wasn't he was clear that it could be sued. Yes, anything can be sued, but specifically on this, you were talking about this and he talked that yes, there could be a lawsuit against this as it being a fee. And I don't think that we in the city have much room in our budget to hire the attorney to fight something for this. Why not just have the citizens vote? It just seems more reasonable just to let the citizens vote according to the charter that they had put in place. Also, has there been a contract in regards to this that you have all read? Because I know that a lot of people were overly concerned about the contract with Roundhouse and the port commissioners and reading the fine details of that contract, and I would expect the same from the council here. Yeah, and I was going to read the charter, but Mr. Miller already did it. So I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't say fee, it says tax, charge, or fee, and this ordinance will cause a $4 a month fee. And I'm curious, what is a rolling contract? It's my understanding that it was only supposed to be for 10 years. Does a rolling contract mean that will continue on?
It renews after 1 year.
So yearly, so it's a yearly, so
if we say
up to 10 years.
Yeah, sorry, I'm responding, sorry. So if we go, hey, we want out of this contract, technically, we're still in it for 9 more years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so there's been a vote or a motion, it's been seconded, Amber, it sounds like we've had lots of discussion. So.
May I discuss a little bit more?
Sure.
I just want to say that I never felt like the intentions of the council were to skirt around the language. Our discussions on this topic specifically were really about litter in the community. And that was really what prompted all of this, was just watching the trash flow down the road. And that was our overall objective, was to try to just clean up our community. So at no point in time was anybody trying to skirt around the language in our charter. That's not the intention here whatsoever.
And just to add on to that in regards to intention, I mean, I have so many individuals that have mobility challenges. And so me being in healthcare, that's where my heart goes to. And with so many individuals saying, I would love this, you know, it's not gonna hurt my back. I'm not gonna have to depend on my neighbor. So the intent was never to skirt around it either. So I think we've spent quite a bit of time.
Councilor Emily Baker's on via phone.
Oh,
She has her hand up.
okay. Councilman Baker,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes,
Can you hear me? Yes?
yes.
Can you hear me? I do remember when this was brought up before that many people did speak up in favor of the rolling carts. And I have recently spoken to a social service coordinator out of Roseburg. I know it's a larger town, but she said, and I specifically asked about help for people who might need assistance with garbage. She said, yes, particularly if they qualify for other services, such as Medicare, Medicaid, and then or OHP, Oregon Health Plan, or other social services, that usually there is a coordinator who has some flex funds, and she's seen them be used for garbage before. So that's one thing that I want to look into. I just talked to that person this weekend. I apologize. I have a cold and I haven't been able to follow up on that. But I do believe, particularly I asked about our food bank coordinator, could a nonprofit help raise funds? And they said yes. But so that's on that side. And I apologize. I thought I had the ordinance. Our ordinances, which are this giant many pages, do call them garbage rates. So while maybe some of our other documents haven't, they are rates. So it's not, what are the three terms that we are not allowed to raise without a vote? Fees. If someone could help me, I believe. So in our ordinances, and I could, if somebody else pulls those up more quickly, then, but I know it was there because I was going to send it to everybody. It is called a rate, and like our electric rates. And that's why I don't think that this is a fear of a lawsuit any more than any decision we make could, as even the attorney also said, could go to a lawsuit. So that it seems cleaner for the community, safer for people who are mobility challenged. I know it'll, and I have picked up garbage cans up and down Moody and Regulator for other people, as well as really hoping that we make it clear that we don't want anybody to be overburdened, and while, you know, it might take some time, but we can find some to help for that extra pay for some, is my thought. I'm done speaking now.
Thank you. Okay, I think everyone has had an opportunity to speak, so let's go to a vote. Roll call vote.
Councilmember Compton,
Aye.
Evelyn Baker,
Aye.
Farrell. No. Kathy,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
Merrill.
Aye. It passes. Okay, next on the list, approve new OLCC application for Ixtapa and Cascade lots.
All right. Ixtapa Cascade Lots Inc. has applied for a new OLCC liquor license for the restaurant and the Port of Cascade Lots waterfront building. Our planning consultant has determined that conditional use process will be required before the restaurant can open, but that does not preclude OLCC application being reviewed by local governing body. So options: approve the license, do not approve the license.
Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the liquor license application for Ixtapa Cascade Locks Incorporated.
I second.
All right, discussion. Councilman Miller?
Okay, Mr. Spoo, our planning or city planner.
Yep.
Is requesting a conditional use permit.
Councilman Miller, pardon me, but we're gonna stay on the OLCC. We can talk about the.
This was read,
conditional-
now, this was read in the synopsis of about the conditional use permit, so I believe that is open for discussion.
We're voting on the OLCC.
Yeah, we are, but there's other things in there. It was in the synopsis, which was read. So anything read in that synopsis is open for discussion.
Move forward, go ahead.
All right. I would like to have Mr. Spoo attend a council meeting either in person or via Zoom. Delays to Ixtapa by the city. First, by a pre-application meetings. When did we start having pre-application meetings? And when does interior decorating, kitchen equipment, sales, have anything to do with the parking at the building. I mean, this is part of this conditional use permit. Building seating capacity determines the parking, not this other stuff. And this property is on port property, which port governs their parking and stuff. They're the ones that take care of it. That's not on city property. They have ample parking for that in there. These are delays made by Mr. Spoo wanting a conditional use permit for Ixtapa. Is going to cost additional time for Ixtapa to become operational. Council has the authority to direct Mr. Spoo to expedite this process by having the application considered directly by council. With the steering wheel on the fast track to be operational by mid-August, it would be great for the community if Ixtapa could be open then as well. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. So those are all valid points, but right now we're voting on the OLCC permit for Ixtapa. So been voted, second, we've had discussion, so vote.
Councilor Bacon.
Councilman Baker,
Are we voting?
You had your hand up.
You had your hand up for discussion?
Or did you not put it down from last time?
I think I did not put it down, and I'm joining on another computer. I don't know why my first computer wouldn't work, but I just wanted to say I know that this Ixtapa has been in discussion with the port for a long time, and I do really feel like the port will has been following up with due diligence, and I support this application and that Ixtapa can get moving to join with the Sternwiller opening. I'm finished talking, thanks.
All right. All right, move to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Crompton,
Aye.
Emmeline Baker,
Aye.
Carol. Aye. Happy,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. All right, 5C, approved OLCC application for JettyLight.
JettyLight LLC has applied for a new OLCC liquor license for the Columbia Gorge Sternwiller. OLCC requires local governing body to.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the OLCC for JettyLight?
I move that we approve the OLCC for JettyLight.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? Seeing there's no discussion, move to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Crompton,
Aye.
Emmeline Baker,
Aye.
Carol. Aye. Happy,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. All right, we will succeed, application for JettyLight passes. All right, we're on to 6, appearance of interested citizens.
And Tiffany Pruitt, Cascade Locks. So I just want to bring a few things to your attention. We have people who are very good at finding loopholes, and we have very seedy and dangerous people living in the train right of ways, camping out. Now, I understand that that is a completely different governmental entity, but the city should be able to send a letter to the train people and just say, hey, listen, can you please give law enforcement permission to remove these people off of train right of way property, because a lot of them have been 86 out of every business here in Cascade Locks. So that, you know, I don't know, it's just very frustrating. They just always find these little loopholes. Also, another thing, does ODOT not have to abide by the same rules that the citizens of Cascade Locks? We are required to keep our lawn at a specific height. And I am noticing when you pull off or pull onto the highway in either direction, the weeds are very high and they have not been mowed this year. Can we not send a letter to ODOT requesting that they please? I know everybody's hurting everywhere. I see it everywhere I go. Nobody's cutting anything on right of ways or anything. Sometimes the signs on the way to the river, you can't even see them because they're covered up with trees. But I mean, can we just not hold other businesses to the same standard that citizens are being held to? Also, the bulk email still stinks on this, the city, and I really wish that we could get that worked out, so that you can send a bulk email and not have to do a single one to each counselor, and still, you don't know if the emails have been received because nobody responds. I have no idea when I send an email if you guys receive them. And, you know, it's frustrating as a citizen trying to have conversations with those who represent me, not knowing one way or the other. And then also, I am noticing that some counselors are allowed to talk 2 and 3 times, and others are cut off after talking only once. And I would ask that all would be allowed to speak equally or restricted equally and not be in balance. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jordan, you take notes. Thank you. Okay, reports and presentations, city committees.
I brought in a update on the museum operations.
Sorry, there's a person with their hand up online, sorry, I just saw. Ann and Matt Kelly, you are free to speak.
Thank you very much. We have submitted a letter to the Planning Commission of Cascade Locks, and we recently attended their meeting virtually. We had significant damage to our house in Cascade Locks back in December from a burst pipe. We've been living there about half time since we bought it a few years ago. And we're now looking at replacing it and living there full time. We're designing a house that has a planned ADU or ARU, accessory residential unit, in the daylight basement area. So this would be a complete replacement of what's there now with approximately a 2,000 square foot dwelling. We are doing this not with the intent to rent it, but or not short term, not near term anyway. But it's a thing recommended by ARP and a number of regional governments and the state. An ADU can be a really great option for aging in place. I'm a cancer survivor and I also have type 1 diabetes. I'm 58, I'm doing fine right now. But I want to be prepared when the time comes, when we might need to be able to live on one level. We might need an extra income. There might just be one of us. So we are looking at getting a loan for the whole build. And there are obstacles to getting loans that are built into city ordinances and the development code right now. So we've submitted a request that those requirements be lifted. Hood River has also lifted these things. I'm going to speak about owner occupancy requirements. For one thing, those are teetering on fair housing questions. They do preclude renters from using one of the 2 units. They also make it quite difficult to get lenders to approve funding for the house because obviously, not necessarily us, but if a borrower is to default on the loan, obviously the lender is not going to live in the house, so they would be immediately in violation. There would be no owner living on the property. Another issue is a 12-month lease requirement. It is something Hood River's also removed from their requirements. They also found it to be detrimental to funding for this type of housing. ADUs have been determined needed housing, and the state has put a lot of effort toward getting local jurisdictions to reduce barriers to development of ADUs, both in terms of guidance and law. So we asked that the 12-month lease agreement be removed. I also just want to suggest that it seems somewhat excessive and arbitrary because the state defines short-term rental as 30 days and vacation rental as 45 days. So if the intent is to preclude short-term
not to-
rentals. Excuse
Sorry
me?
to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a 3-minute and so the timer went off, but what I would love for you to, can you write a letter to?
I've written a letter, and Kathy Woosley said that she was going to pass it on to the council. So I was hoping
Okay.
that you had seen it already.
Okay.
Okay.
We will
I
make-
did want to say one more thing to the council quickly, not about us, but there is $2.5 million in state funding available to local jurisdictions for housing planning, including auditing your full code. You can get Department of State, you can get DLCD consultants to do the work for you. The deadline is
Okay.
the 31st, July 31st.
Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you. Okay. Councilor Miller? About the museum?
I presented you with the paper on the museum operations for so far this year. It's pretty self-explanatory about the number of visitors and how it's improving every month, and the admissions. And also it gives a map of where our visitors are coming from. We have an account of where people are staying, and their length of stay, how they are referred to visiting our museum. Janice went through a great deal of information gathering to put together this stuff. So I thought you'd be interested in seeing this from the museum.
Thank you. It's good information.
I'm surprised at how many states we actually covered, in which of the states we have no visitors from.
Right.
Yeah, which is interesting that Utah is one of them. We need to talk to Gordon Zimmerman.
And Colorado.
Oh, this is good information. Thank you. All right. EES Consulting. You're up.
You're onto the bulk of the meeting now.
All right, well, I will try and stay on time and make sure we explain things as best I can. Jordan, are you gonna pull the slides?
Got it right here.
And where would you guys like me to be? Here?
Sure. The elephant is you.
Actually, I think it's very sophisticated the way you guys have good coverage with rotating cameras and you move a little bit and it focuses on you, so.
It's hard when we go up like this when we're talking to someone, but we really should be looking at that.
Yeah.
I just want to ask, speaking of that, we need to move that, is that a microphone for that?
I saw that, yeah, we can move it over by there and.
Yeah. Oh, okay, while
Okay.
we're doing that, just a couple introductory comments. So I'm Russ Schneider from EES Consulting. I've been with EES Consulting, this is my 7th year doing rate studies and such around the Pacific Northwest. I have clients in British Columbia, Montana, Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho. I travel quite a bit. I prefer to drive instead of fly, so I drive all around the Pacific Northwest quite a bit. Visiting folks. We do these rate studies for small utilities, very small utilities. I would put Cascade in the small category, and I've done them for very large investor-owned utilities where we have to do rate case testimony, everything before commission and that kind of thing. So a pretty broad impression of that. As far as the process, obviously you guys evaluated the bids to do the study. And we were awarded the bid. I requested a bunch of data from Jordan and staff. And I will report to you that I've gotten responsive data to everything I've asked for. So everything I asked Jordan for billing data from your system, financial data as best was available, budget data, all that stuff. I got that from Jordan. And we take all that stuff and we put it into our models and we evaluate it from an outside perspective on what fair and equitable rates are for the different rate classes. So that's just the 10,000 foot view of why we're here and what we're doing for you. I do have some kind of educational slides at the end of my deck that I'm not planning to go through in the interest of time, but that's just kind of general information on the cost of service studies. So Jordan, anything else you'd like to say in introductory there or?
No,
Okay, go ahead, next slide if you don't mind. Okay, so current situation, you guys have a fiscal year that's kind of June, go ahead.
I just wondering if you can start the presentation so we can see that full screen. Is that possible or is that? There we go. It's kind of off, huh? Or is that right?
And make it just start to look that way.
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
There we
Thank you.
go.
My old eyes, I just had to have
I
that.
can see it much better now.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jordan. Okay, so where you are right now, you have a budget approved. You don't have really a long-term financial forecast that I saw per se, or a long-term capital plan per se. There are some projections for your budget year and what you historically needed in the past. So one of the tasks for us is to put together, what you need from rates over time. And that includes projecting your power supply costs for the next 5 years, putting in an escalation factor for other costs, looking at what you need for reserves contribution and what kind of capital funding seems reasonable given the financial information. So these are the primary assumptions. So I like to call these like key assumptions I made in making that financial projection for you. The fiscal year, I used your fiscal year, so monthly costs to your fiscal year. Bonneville has a different fiscal year than you. Their fiscal year starts in October, goes through September, starts again. They changed their rates this October, but I did kind of split those years into your fiscal year in my projection. I assume the Bonneville's rates that are currently proposed are going to go into effect. They have not gone into effect yet, but Bonneville did issue their final draft record of decision, and there were no changes to the actual rate components. There's quite a bit of discussion about some of the fiscal and fish and wildlife issues that are being litigated in the rate case that they have quite a bit on, but no changes to the rates that are likely to be put in place. The power dividend that you just got, I'm using that as an offset to power supply costs in the months you're achieving it from Bonneville. And I have a reserves contribution on an annual basis of 150,000. I did play around with 200,000 and a couple other things, but that seemed like what you budgeted in the past, so it seemed like a reasonable assumption there. And then I have 500,000 a year for capital spending, just on your system, investing in your system. I think that's fairly lean, even for a small system, but I didn't want to kind of overstate rate impacts that you might have going forward. So that seemed like a reasonable assumption. And then the revenue projections that are revenues at your current rates. So there was a discussion about charges and rates and such earlier, but the way I think of rate revenues is you have billing determinants, which are like kilowatt hours or kW or number of meters you have, and then you take that times the charges or the rates for those services and you get a bill. So the billing determinants are the numbers that get multiplied by the rates to get the bill. And so we'll kind of show you how those build up in later slides. And then I do have a growth assumption of 0.8% for load growth. We've had some growth because of the pandemic and people being able to work remote and generally looking around the town. It seems like, you know, the economy is a little bit on the upswing at least, from just an outward person visiting. So we do have some modest load growth. We don't have, you know, a huge amount of load growth from, you know, electrification of electric vehicles and that kind of thing. I mean, there is opportunity for much more load growth, but this is a fairly modest assumption. I do assume 5% growth in industrial load, and this is mostly like your Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or server type loads, but not the really big ones. We're not talking, you know, the 100 megawatt type of things. We're talking about the kind of couple megawatt loads that you have, and those growing a little bit based on Jordan, working with Jordan, what seems realistic. So I'll pause there for any questions on my overall assumptions. Go ahead.
Just the 0.8% load growth for most classes, where'd you come up with that number? Is how did that determine?
It is, so you get a, your account executive with Bonneville provides an agency load forecasting estimate to you. It's a service that Bonneville does for you. And that was the average annual growth rate they had.
So that's based on historical data.
Yeah, they typically take 10 years of rolling data and see what the average annual growth rate is over the year and pass forward. And we do, there are more advanced ways of doing load forecasts, but I think for this purpose, it's sufficient. Thank you. Good question. Anybody else?
Is that for residential and is separate from the 5%?
Yes, good question. So that's like your general service and your residential and public agency, those type of classes. Whereas your industrial new load, I have a higher percentage. So, good question.
I mean, I can't see the math, you know, I'm just, where did 5% come from? Was that again from the BPA, or is that something that you were able to, that you calculated?
Yeah, that was more talking to Jordan about how much load was being considered and what that would work out into average megawatts, and then converting that back into the percentage. So kind of blocking it back that way.
Thanks.
The idea here, and if I'm getting too far afield, let me know, is that, you know, you set rates so that if some customer walks away when they leave or they join, that everybody else's rates don't need to go up or down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, you're agnostic to people coming and going because they're paying the right rates. They only pay their cost of service. If they go, you know, we're sad, but everybody else doesn't have to have the rates go up. So got it.
Is the 0.8% growth, including the projected new housing that we're getting in Cascade? There's like 45 new homes.
Yeah, so I didn't do a specific, like, I've done that for other Oregon utilities where they have projections of various subdivisions and stuff on there. This is organic load growth based on the historical empirical data. So it's numbers forward, not specific things other than the industrial load.
But you did say it was based off of the prior 10 years, which does include a lot of development and growth up in Shahala and Leedsong. So I feel like it's probably pretty close.
Yeah. And your system is interesting because in the start of the Bonneville contracts, you were about a 2 megawatt system, and now you're about a 4 average megawatt system. So you've kind of doubled since then, but it's doubled within kind of a small utility framework to some extent. And under Bonneville's future contracts, that would actually be considered a small utility exception they have for 5 average megawatts. It would be under that. So size. Okay, anything else on assumption? Go ahead.
One more, that we went from the 2 to the 4. Basically, it was one business that really all the rates went up. And so hence why you're here.
Yes, and I'll try to capture that, and hopefully if I don't capture it well, Kathy, you call me on it and I'll come back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Jordan, we should probably move forward if you don't mind. Okay, so one of the kind of marching orders I had initially here was to take a hard look at your Bonneville power supply costs. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide because I did look and you were visited by your counties that where they talked about the rate increase already. But from the putting in these loads to what they're actually gonna result in your projected 23-24, you're getting about a $620,000 increase in power supply costs in total. And that's a 44% increase. You can see the primary driver, if you look down below there, I don't have a pointer, but the second to the last tier 2 kind of block there, you can see most of it is your above high watermark load going from $34 to $63, basically 85% increase in that rate for that kind of power. And that is related to Bonneville's rate design, where they have a tiered rate design where your tier 1 you got back in 2012 is at 30, and your tier 2 is at a forecast market-based product. I would tell you that $63 is a screaming deal out there in the market right now. The real market for power is in the 90s on a forward basis for next year. So 60, even though Bonneville's been beat up about the 60 being double 30, still a pretty good deal in the grand scheme of current prices of market power. I don't think I have anything else on that slide unless there are questions. Okay. Okay, and then I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this slide, but this is the official kind of handy Whitman utility cost survey index. And this is a nationwide survey, especially for municipals, that tracks distribution costs. These are your contractor and your equipment, things like transformers, cost of line crews, that kind of thing. And you can see the inflation rates, we're in the 2 to 3 to 4% range, but we're as high as 16% in 2022, results of shortages during the pandemic and stuff. And I'm sure you're seeing this in other aspects of the city, pretty high inflation. I used to do these rate studies, and we do long-term inflation at 2%, and nobody's telling me to do 2%. It's 3+ on almost everything. So I don't need that. That's in your packet for future reference. So go ahead. Okay, this is I do want to spend a little bit of time on this slide. This is what I put together for your revenue requirement. And revenue requirement is rate making speak for what you need out of rates. Okay, so if you take your inflows, your outflows, your costs, what on net do you need from rates? And I have an audit year. I think 2021 was the last one available for me. So I like to start with one audit year, and then 23 is supposed to be pretty close to your budget. So it should be pretty close to what you're expecting for budget. And then 24 through 27 are forecasted by EES. So that's our forecast of your future costs. Now, the takeaway here down below, you can see in fiscal year 24, you're about 5.6% short. And you probably should raise rates overall by about that much. Now, there are strategies for raising rates that we're going to talk about. And one of those is to kind of smooth them over time. So I do, in the last 2 lines, have a separate option where you could look at maybe doing a lower increase up front and planning to do several rate increases all in one vote. I have, it has become more common, especially in municipals, cities and public utility districts, to do multi-year rate plans where you actually adopt a 2 or 3 year rate increase instead of just a 1-year action and then have staff come back at you with the next crack at the apple. So I mean, that is something that has been more common in my other studies I've done. Here, I think if you're just asking me what to do now and what to do this October, it's the 5.6 would be, you need to get some additional revenue coming in ahead of the Bonneville power supply increase. So I'll pause there because this is an area I want to have a little feedback from the council, because my idea is to get feedback on what you want to see in a rate proposal and then bring back something that's a bit more refined to your preferences for further consideration.
Councilman.
I think I understand here, but I was just hoping you could clarify, incremental rate pressure percent is what's the formula for that?
Yeah, so it's like you see the 7.96 minus the 5.64 equals the 2.3, so that's the, if you do the 5.6, you don't have to do 7 the next year. You've already got the 5.6 flowing forward.
And the 5.6 is calculated from which two numbers?
It's the base year, just all 24.
So what do you mean all 24?
0 is calculated from 0, so. We're assuming you did no rate increase.
I understand. I'm just saying, how did you come up with 5.64%? I'm not asking.
Oh,
that,
no,
but
sorry.
subtraction, I'm asking for the division.
Yeah, the 182,000 over the 3,233,300.
So is the shortage divided by
Rates.
Understand. Thank you.
Good question. Sorry, I didn't pick it up. Sorry.
Question.
Go ahead.
So in this, and so you have knowledge of the new substation that we're forecasting to come in and the 13 megawatts that are passed for the, so you're taking all of that into consideration with this information?
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing the 3 million and other contributions of capital. I mean, that's some of the grant funding for that and such, and that is used towards that expense. To some extent, so I mean, it kind of nets out in your 23, but it is in the plan here.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, and I know there's gonna be growth forward.
Were you asking about megawatts or are you talking about dollars? Because I think there might have been I felt like you were saying with the growth in megawatts and your.
And all, I mean, it's.
Yeah, so that line item there says other contribution of capital includes
Right,
funding that's needed for that, but then you also have other income up above, so you have the 3 million in other income is covering a lot of the 3 million in other contributions of capital because you have the grant funding used to do that expansion for the transformer you're going to buy for the additional capacity. But it's the dollars for the capacity, I guess.
okay.
So. Go ahead.
Okay, so it looks like it's pretty accurate, the 5.64%. So the percentages that come after that, like the next year, the 2.32, is that pretty much guessing, or did Bonneville Power kind of make you feel that that's what they were going to do?
Good question. So Bonneville sets rates for 2 years.
Okay.
So their rates are known, for a 2-year period. After that, I'm assuming they'll probably go up 4%. So the further you get forward, the less certain it is. So I mean, it's a fair point. And we have to escalate your costs. So I'm escalating 3.5% on a lot of expenses here. That could end up being 6%, or it can end up being 2% in some. You make changes to things. So the further you get in time, the less certain it is. So, that's the harder part about doing multi-year rate plans.
Yeah.
Is, a lot of times councils and boards and stuff may be a little less comfortable with 3 years from now versus the next year, that they've spent a lot of time in sharpening your pencils of your budget for next year's budget.
Russ, we have a council member Baker, she has her hand up on.
Yep, go ahead.
Councilman Baker.
Thank you, and Council Member Farrell asked part of my question, and I want to just paraphrase to make sure that I'm understanding. So when you show for 2024 the 5.64, and then a multi-year rate option is 4.2, I see that it getting up to 2026 is 3.0 rather than 1.38. It is my understanding that that is a consideration if we didn't raise it so high as 5.64 this year, then you were showing how over the next few years we still catch up on that additional rate revenue needed. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the lower rate increase you do today. Likely means the higher rate increase you have to do in the future. So yes, I think you caught that right on.
Thank you.
And I would say there is one example of a city in California that was in the news last year that, council didn't want to raise rates, or refused to raise rates for years and years and years, and then they had to have a 30% rate increase, which would be something you would want to avoid. The principle of rate making, graduation is generally better, like smaller single-digit increases on a regular basis is way better than a double-digit increase. That's unexpected. So.
And these rate percentage increases seem to track general ideas for what inflate, like general currency inflation is too. It's like, it's gone up a lot right now, but normally it's not more than 5%. So does that seem, not completely
Yeah,
accurate,
these are a result of my assessment of your costs, so I didn't look at currency inflation or anything, but I would agree with you that, I in the Wall Street Journal just a couple weeks ago was the first time inflation eased a little bit on a real basis. So I think it's tracking, and even when I was doing higher inflation on some of my studies, we were always dampening it over time, which and that's probably the dampening we've seen. Okay, I'm a little worried about time, but go ahead.
We gotta keep these moving on, but with the multi-year rate option, if we did a 4.2%, we would still have a deficit in the first year, but the increase, a larger increase in the second year would make that up.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Jordan, can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, so first result of the draft study, and these are all draft results for discussion. No final proposals today. I'm trying to get feedback here to refine the proposal. But this is residential, commercial, public agency, and then we have South Bank or rural. It's listed as rural in your rate schedule. So when we were looking at it, we have some of that, but I also use South Bank, which is in your budget. So those mean the same thing in this presentation if there's any confusion. And you'll see that compared to other classes, residential and commercial in town are paying a little bit more than their share relative to 100%. 100% would be paying exactly your share. The red lines are plus and minus 10%, and generally in rate making, if you're in range, your rate design is fairly balanced. So typically when you're making changes, you want to move folks that are below the line up and folks that are above the line down a little bit. And you'll see that in my proposal, I try to move everybody a little bit closer to even when I get there. The financials, the budget is split out between South Bank and city. Based on some assumptions, I would say generally in rate making, a postage stamp approach to rate making would meld all those costs and charge a postage stamp rate to everybody. That's a general principle. That's Bonneville was founded on that. Bonneville doesn't charge somebody in Harney County a different rate than somebody in St. Helens, but given the history of the extra costs and the budget categories that are tracked separately there, I felt like I should keep that in the study. And I did do a direct assignment of what seemed like the appropriate amount of cost based on your budget to the South Bank rate classes. So they do show them under collecting more than other classes, and that's reflected in my rate proposal with slightly higher rate increases for those classes. I will pause there for questions on this chart. Okay.
So what is the public agency? What is that?
Schools, dispatchery, government buildings, support.
Okay, and they get a discounted rate?
They get, I don't remember what is up there, but it's different. I'm assuming it's lower. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
At least based on my assessment, it looks lower than the cost of service currently, so. Should get a slightly higher increase in the results.
For an industry, that's. So I think it's significantly lower than.
Yeah.
Commercial.
I think, I don't have anything else on this slide. Oh, there's a hand online, I think.
Oh, yeah, Denise is kind of.
Councilmember Denise?
Hello, thank you. It's not necessarily this slide, but I thought we had heard from the BPA person that there might be a change in our high water mark. Have you heard anything like that? Since tier 2 comes after our high water mark, which I think was set a long time ago. Have you heard anything about increasing our high water mark?
Yeah, so you get every 2 years, Bonneville does a rate period high watermark process, and that happens.
That would be Jackie Chan.
You guys are running. I was just looking at some utility where they had bring your dog to work. Everybody got their dogs. I was like, man, I should bring my dog. Okay, so the question was, in the near term, are you likely to get a higher high water mark or a higher allocation of tier 1? As far as I know, not for this rate period. And that would be from October 23 through September 25. It's going to be the same. In 2024, or about a year ahead of the rate case, they will go through that process again and reset it. And so if you had lost one of your industrial customers or one of your big loads and you went from 4 back down to 2 in time for it to be forecasted into the next rate period, then Bonneville could adjust, how much tier 2 you would have. But the rate period is really the size of the federal system and your share of it proportional to all the other Bonneville utilities. I don't see that changing, at least for this rate next 2-year period.
Yeah, probably won't have a significant change till post 2028. That's when the current 20-year contract ends.
I would say in 2029, it does look like they'll have some special treatment for smaller utilities under 5 megawatts, so to the good of the future.
I'm always curious how numbers are calculated. So again, I'm just trying to understand what these percentages mean. Is it, revenue to cost ratio? Can you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's allocated costs for that rate class, what it costs you as a utility to provide electric service to them in total dollars, compared to all the rate revenue you get from that same class. So it's the rate revenue over all of their costs. And if it's 100%, means they're perfectly paying their costs, no more, no less. And then it's compared relative to the other costs.
And so you were able to actually assess the cost to distribute power for each of those rate classes individually?
Yeah, we do. You guys actually have pretty good billing data for demand. We use kilowatt demand or capacity, measured capacity for each billing class to calculate how much of the maximum demand Bonneville is bringing to you that they're using, and that's how we distribute demand related costs. And then you measure how much energy, how many kilowatt hours every rate class uses. And we know how much the kilowatt hours cost, so we know what they, and then for spreading A and G and plant and those kind of things, we use your financials on a disaggregated basis to spread those accounts. And so, I mean, there's a little bit of art to it, but it does spread cost based on how everybody uses your system.
And what was the period used to determine the costs and
22 fiscal 20.
so just 2022?
That is the 12 months of data. We request 12 months of billing data, and that was 12 months.
I guess I'm just a little surprised by the South Bank numbers. because that was something that came up during our revenue. Or the budget process was the cost to distribute power to South Bay customers and maintaining those areas was so much more expensive, and there was a lot of money that we budgeted for contract services for issues for South Bay. So to see them kind of in this happy place, I guess that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I would say the cost of power part isn't that different. It's more the cost of distribution, maintenance and other things that are driving them being more expensive.
And then it was 2022, and I asked Tiffany a question.
Yeah.
Was that an anomaly that year? Because I remember, would we just not do as much in South Bend last year? I remember we talked a lot about that.
Yeah, I don't think we did because, yeah, previous years we did the undergrounding, and so I think that took away a lot of it. So, yeah, and also it has to do with who you have in charge. I mean, one person sees more things necessary that need to be done and are more proactive, and others aren't. So, you know, it could be a difference in leadership or prerogatives, you know.
Thanks, I know we gotta keep going, but.
It's okay. I had marching orders. I was supposed to be an hour, but I'm starting. They're having to be a
I got a real quick question for Jordan, and I just wrote, like, what's the difference between the commercial and light industrial? What differentiates commercial and puts it into light industrial?
Large industrial. It's a rate class. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's a large industrial, I think over 1 megawatt.
Okay.
It's 6 times the capacity they need.
And we have one customer in that rate class.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I can show that on the next slide, Jordan, why don't you? go to the next slide. Oh, you are. Okay, so you see large industrial, one customer there. They use 9 million kilowatt hours a year, and they have a billing demand. In total, 16,000, which is their monthly KW added up for the year. And you can see that how that compares to residential, commercial, public agency, something and so on. The pie on the left is your revenues, to the question on the chart below, and the pie on the right is allocated costs. So ideally, you want the two pies to look the same, right? You want the amount of revenue proportionally to be about the amount of cost proportionally. So that's the goal, and it's showing kind of the same thing as the chart where we showed the bars up and down. So this was a little more for staff to verify these numbers, so why don't we go to the next slide, and I'll talk about the rate results. Okay, so this is the COSA rates. These are the rates you would charge if you wanted to have exact COSA rates. Typically, you don't do that because if there's a big gap between where you are and where you want to be, you don't jump it all at once. You incrementally move towards COSA rates. So, for example, residential has a $8.77 capacity cost per meter. It's unlikely that you would go from a 0 capacity charge to an $8 capacity charge in one fell swoop. Most times folks that implement a residential demand charge would go to $1 or $2 and gradually work their way towards a charge like that. Because we've had good math questions here, I'm going to explain the math of this chart a little bit. So the top chart has unit costs and rates, and so these are the unit costs of each of these things for each of these rate classes. And the first one, $kW, is demand, and that's the maximum monthly energy that's used at the meter point. So that's capacity in electric system speak, and it drives your distribution system costs. You have to build your poles and wires to cover the maximum demand, that everybody's got their air conditioners and their belt sanders and their dryers on running all at once. You got to be able to cover that for reliability purposes. So it drives a lot of your distribution costs. The second one is $ per kilowatt hour. That's the volumetric charge. That's the one that most people understand. That's just how many KW hours. Okay, and then meter month, that's pretty simple. You have a meter at the house. And every month, there's a cost just to have that meter in the house, so you can spread costs on a meter month. And then because some of your rates don't have a demand charge, I've shown if you reflect demand costs in the meter or in the energy costs, what would they be? So that's the other one, and then below are your current rates. I don't have anything else on this unless there are questions.
Can you define the demand cost?
It is the cost of building capacity to serve the maximum demand as an emphasis. So in Bonneville, in your wholesale power bill, you have a capacity charge from Bonneville. It's in the $10 to $11 kW range. But your distribution system also is primarily related to serving maximum demand, not energy. So it drives a lot of your distribution system. Did that help, Aaron?
Yeah, I was looking in a different economics. Lens.
Demand. Oh, yeah, like. Supply and demand, yeah. Okay. That's all I have on that. Let me see about. Moving into rate change options here real quick, so I can get some feedback. On that, so here is and this is in the packet, but the thing I want you to focus on a little bit is. In distributing that 5.6%, I've come up with a single year increase option on the right, which gives residential a 2% increase. Residential South Bank a 3% increase. Public agencies, higher increase 6 and 7%. And then a majority of the increase to the large industrial customer that's causing a lot of your tier 2 costs, 23% increase for them. And then a modest increase for lighting, the same. So the one question I would have is if you want to do a multi-year rate plan and a multi kind of class rate plan. I don't have that yet. It's something I could put together if the council wants to go the multi-year option. But this is my single year recommendation.
Question on that, on the large industrial, are you taking into account, I know one concern was if data center or Bitcoin or whatever you want to call it comes in and they're using up the power and we're forecasting and we're having to pay for that, then all of a sudden they're like, nope, we're out of here. We don't want to get stuck.
Yeah, so right.
So are you taking into account?
So the one thing to be aware of in your current obligations for power supply, the tier 2 obligation you have to Bonneville is a take or pay obligation, but they do allow you to remarket and they do credit you with load shaping if the load doesn't happen within the 2-year rate period. So within their rate period, they set it, you pay for it, but if you don't use it, you get credit at fairly high load shaping rates back to you. So you bill as you produce, not 100%, but most of it.
Right.
So there's not a ton of risk when you just have tier 2 supply. If you have to go out and buy non-federal power, if it's over 9.9 or one of these big data centers, then you have quite a bit of counterparty obligation and risk to non-federal supply that usually is take or pay, and so you need to make sure that the contracts cover that risk for the city.
From what I understand from Amy said, it is a bit of a gamble. Because what they do is they say, okay, you're not going to use this, so we're going to try and sell it. We're going to sell it for whatever we can. So it is a little bit of a gamble on that.
Yeah, it's a little less of a gamble when you're on Bonneville because they do everything on a forecasted basis, and that provides some natural hedging protection for smaller utilities.
Right.
The data centers and the other businesses that kind of prompted some of this concern.
Right.
Are they over 1 megawatt? Are they going to go into the large industrial, or are they commercial?
So we're not quite there yet, but with Russ and I, we both kind of think anything over 1 megawatt would be separate from this. It would be a negotiated price. And essentially whatever we are paying for tier 2, that's what they say.
Yeah.
And then where we would make our money would be the demand charge.
Yeah, why don't you just go forward to that rate, or we'll just stop that now for the 15th. It's the last one, I think. Yeah, one more. One more.
There,
Here it is, so.
There.
Yeah, so here would be kind of your new large load rate, and the power supply energy would be kind of a pass through of whatever Bonneville's gonna charge you. And the power supply transmission would be a pass through, and then you collect your delivery costs in a monthly demand charge and a fixed charge. So you know, they'd have to bear all, when you get one of these, they have to bear all the power supply risk, it's just not. Practical for a small utility to bear that level of that scale of risk, so you'll have to pass through that in the power supply charges. And this is kind of what that kind of rate would look like.
Based on what you said, even our tier 2 rate is still 50% less than what the rest of the country is paying. So
Yeah, I mean, it looks high, but a lot of them would be happy with 62 right now.
thanks. We won't want to scare away people, you know, we want to encourage commercial industrial development. So that's an important point to bring up.
Yeah, you don't wanna overcharge or undercharge, because
Right.
when the mill shuts down and the guy just lost his job at the mill and he went home and he finds out his electric bill had to go up because they were overcharging the mill, and now everybody else's rates have to go up. You know, that happened in a lot of timber towns, so
That's what we're trying to avoid.
yeah, that's what you want.
Yes.
Okay.
Avoid that.
Jordan, can we go back? Was there another question on that first?
okay, Denise is hand up.
Okay.
Councilmember Denise? Baker?
Hello, thank you. If we were to have that increase for large industrial, it sounds like it's not out of league with other areas. Is there, I've spoken, we brought this question up to the BPA consultant who came and shared with us, as well as I recently spoke with a renewable energy engineer who said in town they have seen that you can suggest if new industry puts solar panels or things back into the grid that they can, then would we write in a change of their rate structure, or would that happen just because they are reducing their power usage? What is the answer to that question?
Yeah, so it would take a lot of solar panels to serve one of the bigger loads, but you know, you can do, I think what Jordan is talking about is more of a special contract approach to the bigger folks, where your attorney looks at the agreements and then that points to a tariff rate that you adopt separately. So that, you know, special terms like that could be covered in that agreement if you had things like that.
Thank you. And I'm aware it wouldn't power the building, it would just put energy back to the grid. And I suppose one would figure that out. So it would look like they were using less power, so they would be paying less in the end, is what I understand. But thank you.
Yeah, and I haven't, net metering isn't something which I've taken a hard look at, but I'm definitely looking at net metering for both small and large folks, other places in Oregon, so it's definitely something I can assist with down the road.
Thank you.
I do want to get some feedback on the bid proposal, so let me, can we go to residential? Okay. So I'm assuming that folks aren't wanting to move towards a residential demand charge. And so I don't have that kind of as an option here, but if it was something the council really wanted me to look at, I can provide some options there. I kind of kept something similar to your current rate design, but with some improvements to move it towards cost of service is kind of the approach I've taken to your rates. And you can see a 2% increase here. It takes your base charge up to $11 and the energy charge up just a little bit to $7.9. This is about $2.24 a month extra for an average customer. Okay, go ahead, Jordan, to the next one. Okay, for outside Urban Brook County or South Main, little bit higher increase here, 3%. But leaving the base charge at 20, because it's already quite a bit higher. And doing most of the increase on energy. And this would be about $3.90 a month more for folks in this category. General service. Similar approach here. This is about $11.60 more a month for inside commercial businesses. That's a 1% increase, so $11 is a small portion of their total average bill compared to residents, even though it sounds like more. Did this by focusing the increase a little bit on the over 15,000. The higher consuming members, just because that your growth energy is costing you more than your kind of tier 1 energy, so that's the reason for that. Go ahead on the next one, Jordan, on the rural outside. This is about $19 more a month for the commercial. In South Bank, it's a 4% increase. Did round the base charge. It's funny, some utilities want their base charge to be exactly an even number. Some want them to be a 27 cents, so it sounds scientific, but anyways, I went for $21 here. And then public agency. We have mostly on energy here, and because that seemed to be the difference with the other. We do have a decent demand charge for these consumers, but they do have pretty high demands compared to their energy usage, which impacts the size of your system and power supply. Go ahead, Jordan. Outside 7%, so slightly higher outside. I guess if folks felt like if they should be more severe difference between the inside and outside, that would be something we could tweak. Industrial service. You can see I have 23% increase. It's mostly on energy because that's where those coming from. I didn't increase the demand charge here or the base charge for them. Focused on the on-peak energy charge for the most part. And then lighting, just slight increase to all your lighting rates. Sometimes people forget about lighting and don't increase lighting rates for long periods of time, and they get way out of whack. I think it's just a good idea to do inflationary increases to your lighting rates. It is, you do have to go out and maintain them. So I think that's a good idea. I did have a conversation with Jordan about what's included in these lighting services. And $2.50 would be really low for a bundled lighting service, but for just kind of delivery and energy, it's a fairly reasonable rate when other costs are covered separately. The $2.50 rate there. Okay, and we talked a little bit about the new large load rates. I don't have too much else on that. I guess globally, I'd be looking for a little feedback from the council on two things. One, the 1 year versus the multi-year preferences. And two, the rebalancing. Did I do too much to certain classes or not enough to other classes? So those would be two areas I'd be looking for feedback on. And then I could bring back a refined proposal for you and any other preferences you have. And I suppose feedback now would be helpful, and then I suppose feedback later would be good to do that.
So the increases in charges, that was proposed for based on next year's increase, is that right, Rod?
Yes, 2024, yeah.
And I guess to answer your question for feedback, I think the multi-year rated approach makes a lot of sense to kind of spread out that instead of hitting people. So I personally, I've kind of voted that way myself, or feel like that's appropriate. And I felt like the changes that you made really affect the people that we also see are the ones that are driving the costs up. So I think that also, I appreciate the explanation. I was thinking as you're going through the presentation how complicated this is to me. It's like insurance is a whole other industry. So I thought you did a really good job of taking something that's really complex and breaking it down and explaining to layman like myself. So
well, I appreciate that. Fair time.
I had a quick question. So your new large load rate that you're suggesting, does that holistically cover the 23% increase in all of these fees? Or is this different? Like,
Yeah, so, sorry, there's a large industrial rate. Can you go to that, Jordan? Yeah, so this is the 23% rate. That's for your
Yeah.
existing one customer.
yeah,
And the new large load, the next one, go ahead, Jordan. This would be for other big customers.
okay, so incoming, this would be their new. okay.
So I mean, the options we could do is change the rate for that one customer.
Mhm.
Or make them switch to the new large load and treat them like all the other new ones and have them do a separate contract.
What's the different economic difference?
Well, they're already on your system paying rates and
No, I mean, like. What is the change in revenue, this system versus the new system?
If they were to opt for this.
Yeah, like, would you opt for this or would you opt for the other?
yeah, I mean, you could give them a choice. You'd probably be okay either way. They're a little slightly different because I have the power supply, kind of this straight pass through here is kind of a melded what should be increased. The tier 2 rate from Bonneville includes capacity, so. You know, here they're paying a higher capacity charge of $9 than I have in the other rate. So, look, I could merge them into one.
No, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out the math.
Good comment on that.
Councilmember Baker has her hand up.
Okay.
Hello, and with this 23% increase, do you know the rate in Hood River or the Dalles or similar in large rate, the overall rate? Are we similar? Would we then be higher? Or do you know?
Comparable.
Yeah, so I am aware of some of the other rates. For Hood River, I think you would be comparable because they're facing a similar power supply to you. Northern Wasco has access to different resources, so they may have higher or lower opportunities, but they do take a similar approach to, you know, recovering their delivery costs separately from power supply. But I can't speak to whether it would be lower or higher per se.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I was also surprised just that it wasn't I guess for me anyway, when you hear $600,000 deficit with revenue versus, I was really scared of what.
All of this, right?
Yeah, so when you're talking a 2% increase for residential customers, that made me, you know, $2 a month or whatever it was that you said, it was, to me, you know, it's a little bit more easier to swallow that, and to know that our electrical system is healthy financially, not just for supplying what we have right now, but also for the growth. It makes you feel good to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some mild concern that you're investing enough in your capital plan. Just generally into your system, but based on the information I've been given in your plans, you know, that's kind of what I have to go without doing a system plan.
But that was something that gave you a little pause that maybe we should be putting more to capital.
Yeah, I think, you know, capital budget seems a little lean. Just frankly.
Would that be something you could also look at if we were to adjust that and how that would affect the rates?
It's, if you're cash funding capital, it's gotta come out of rates and reserves, and you don't have a lot of extra reserves in your fund for the light fund. And you have a goal of maintaining $1 million in the light fund.
Yes, it's gonna say, going back to one of the first slides, the reserve contribution of 150, it's in our finance policy that we maintain $1 million in reserve in our electric department. We're at like 300,000. Or whatever it was to the budget, I don't remember the number, but it wasn't $1 million. And so that 150 would go towards that. This extra 500,000 is actual annual costs towards replacing transformers that are broken, poles that need replaced, cross arms. So this is actual operating capital for when the next giant windstorm comes through.
So question on, I know one thing that was right, where our current substation that we have, when they came in, they said, oh, you could increase it to, what was it 20 megawatts? And then, but it would add this, but that comes with a cost.
Yes.
So I know it sounds great to add all these extra circuits or fans or whatever, but I want to make sure that whole bill doesn't fall on us, and if it does, how are we paying for that? Or who
Yes.
pays for it?
Generally, you are better off to add customers, even as a government service entity.
Right.
It helps spread costs.
Right,
You know, you don't want to throw a lot of money at adding customers. You know,
Right,
just
right.
increase your rate base and your rate of return, you know, like a private entity, but generally, it's good to have capacity. It provides opportunity for new businesses to come and use that capacity, and then they would pay rates and contribute to your fixed costs.
right.
And so generally, it's good to add customers.
I just want to make
But
sure
are
we
you
have funds for
protected?
that. Right,
You know, that gets into kind of line extension. From the dealings I've had with Jordan, it sounds like most of the line extension costs are being covered by the entities that are needing the line extension and capacity upgrades. At least that's my impression from the data I've seen.
I have a question.
Okay, so if a resident comes up to me and says, my bill just went up $11. What will it be next year? Is that gonna, or is that being, are we assuming that's gonna be another $11? What I'm asking is, with this proposed increase, is that half now and half next year? I just want to be clear when people ask me.
Yeah, so the current option I put before you is just a 1-year increase and is not making assessment of future years. However, if I get some feedback that you want to see, you know, a 5-year plan for everybody or a 3-year plan for everybody, I guess one, I'd want to know how many years are folks comfortable with, and then I could do a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan, or, you know, whatever you're comfortable with. And then you would be able to say, yes, it's gonna go up $11 this year, and it's gonna go up $6 next year, or, you know, however that shakes out. That's definitely something I'm set up to be able to do, if that's what you guys wanted to refine to.
Okay. Yeah, personally, my opinion is I'd like it for 2 years. If Bonneville's already contracted, they've already decided for 2 years what their rates are gonna be, then it should be pretty easy for us to be able to do a 2-year plan. Because I know people are, you know, everyone gets mad when the rates go up, so I want to be able to tell them what to expect next year.
right.
That's just my opinion.
Councilman
Sean? I want to comment on that, the time link to that week first, and then I'll get to my question, but I was thinking maybe a 3-year, because of when our budget year is and when Bonneville's budget year is, they don't overlap perfectly, so doing 2 years will leave, for us, leaves a chunk of leftover for Bonneville where we don't know, and like where a 3-year kind of has the overlap on the other side, where we might just assume that they're gonna go up, and if it doesn't, then we're not, I mean, then we ran the risk of maybe having a little bit higher rate increase then, but like the next year won't be horrible. Versus the other way where we did it 2 years and then we started another thing and we assumed it was gonna stay the same for the next 2 years. And then they just changed it and it goes way up, and we're trying to catch up, or the other way where we're way overcharging. The other way we kind of have a chance to respond.
So less of a gap.
I don't know if less of a gap, it's more of a waiting for Bonneville to change
Right.
before we make our do. So we are reacting to their change instead of trying to plan out a change that may or may not happen. In that 3-year kind of system. I can forecast. Just because we're offset just enough where it's like, oh, if we guess what they're gonna do,
Right.
unless they're good. Window ahead of time to know what they're gonna do, like, here they've kind of given us a decent, like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it, and there's time for you guys to. Beforehand to know, then.
Mhm.
And then my question was actually for the COSA draft results by grade class slide. Would we get a slide like this, like I found this slide very helpful in comparing our the usage across our categories.
Correct one?
Yeah. Could we give like something like this for what the plan, like the what it would look like in the future changes, like what the rate,
Oh, yeah.
so that,
I
because I don't want to see,
Bog over test year.
yeah, because I wouldn't want to see like commercial constantly burdening significantly over what their costs are. Where, you know, others are well below where we need them to be. Because when I look at this, I would like to see everybody at like 102%. Because then we're slightly making money on everybody, not losing 10% on South Bank and losing like 30% on large and government agencies, but losing 10 to 15% on streetlights, and all of that is being lumped into 2 different categories.
Yeah, I can definitely show like 2026. With that same show.
Or for whenever we have our plan ready.
Yeah, it depends on whether you guys 2 or 3.
All right. Councilmember Denise has her hand up.
Okay.
Hello, and if you could go back to the projected revenue requirement, slide 5. Because that shows us a 5-year, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 4-year. And then with the multi-year rate option, showing that it's lower the first year and then moderate the second year, and less than each time going down. If it's part of our original contract with you, personally, I don't mind that you do the multi-year rate option out to 4 years. I mean, what's your opinion? What is common? What is, I feel like as Councilmember Farrell said, when people ask, I like to show them, look, it's yes, there's cost of living increases, and cost of use increases, but we're going down. So I personally like the multi-years, and what's your opinion on that? Do most cities ask for that or not?
Yeah, so my opinion is that, I mean, the further out in time you get, the more uncertainty there is, but it's definitely part of what I agreed to do to give you rates for all 4 years, if that's what you want. So I think those are 2 parts of the question there. I tend to, I guess personally, I lean a little shorter than a 4 or 5 year rate plan, just given the uncertainty, but definitely can provide that for the council.
So I agree with Sean's 3-year, that sounds like really good, and from a budgetary perspective. What I didn't think about was we might have had a weather event, and you have to remember your budget's the bare minimum and does not include any catastrophic weather events, so your budget is waning when it comes to that, and that could have been what the difference was between those 2 years as well. So that's a consideration in all of this as well.
I just didn't want to make us make rate decisions based off of a year, just 1 year. You know, it seemed like I didn't know if you know, we should be, you know, the peanut butter spread, you know, averaging that over a period of time, sort of like the residential growth was based on 10 years. Because then you can kind of factor in some of these catastrophic events that we can't predict.
Yeah, I never know the temperament of the council and the preference on that, so I'm just kind of throwing it out there. And it sounds like there's a fairly strong preference for a multi-year approach, at least a couple of years, probably 3 sounds. 2 or 3 sounds like kind of the
Just 3
temperature of
sounds.
the
I
room.
like, sounds everyone like 3?
3 sounds good to me.
3, okay. And then as far as the distribution of charges to kind of, you know, modest changes to base charges and energy charges, the way I've done it, was there any feedback on that or concern with that approach?
I mean, it looked good to me, I just don't know how it, like. Back to my question about the, looking at it compared to like where their costs are in like that,
Future years,
yeah,
yeah.
just for, because I'd like to see it. Balance out and have that planned into our model and not. Just increase everything.
Yes, move classes towards, so get everybody a lot closer in 3 years than they were in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
I think we all want to avoid the case that was in California or wherever it was.
Yes.
Yeah, that all of us would go, oh, what about that? But
Okay, wouldn't be here too.
yeah.
Well, Jordan, I think that's enough feedback I need to kind of sharpen the pencil here with you on line proposal. And I really appreciate the questions, great questions today, and so thank you everybody for the time.
Any other last questions?
Okay, one more question, since you said that our capital expenditures were lean. Is it possible to maybe have a option that like added those numbers like. A little bit better, so that we like, what would be if we kept it like, as you assumed in one where we are. Giving a little bit more money to. Maintaining and updating and increasing our.
Yeah, I could do you know, slightly higher capital investment type scenario. I don't think that would be too difficult.
That would be, I would like that, just to see where the money falls out.
And
How
seemed like
does
there was also.
everybody feel about that? Does
Makes sense.
that make sense? Does it sound all right?
It seemed like there was also concern about the reserves contribution too, not being sufficient.
Yeah,
That's how we're talking about the capital funding for, which are expenses, right, to.
Correct,
Which is
yeah.
different than our reserve fund.
Yes, yeah, so the reserve fund in the finance policy from 2017 said $1 million, so in 2023 money, that's probably 750 or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one of the weird 3-week breaks between council meetings. Will that be enough time to present an updated draft on the 14th?
I had the 14th as being potential next date. but,
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
So
that's my
yeah,
intent.
my thought was do a final presentation discussion on the 14th, and then if council's good, present a resolution adopting the new rates at the next meeting, August 28th.
Does that mean you're coming back in 3 weeks?
I am.
Back to Oregon.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
Russ.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
And then just for Jordan, I mean, can you
Thank
show what $1 million, how little distance that would go if we had a catastrophic event? I think that would be helpful for them to do that because it's very expensive. And it wouldn't really take much to wipe out $1 million. Maybe you're like repairs or something.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I wanted to see the, maybe a little bit more future thought on increasing and fixing our grid.
Well, I know that one 5-day, was it 4 or 5 day storm? Cost quite a bit.
Yeah.
So if we get more than one
Well,
storm.
if for some reason the pyramid substation went down, we'd be screwed. We don't have the money to replace it, so we'd be screwed.
Well, we don't want to do that.
Like in poles and transformers, I mean, just.
Oh, yeah.
The cost of what these little details cost just for repairing those, and I know you're having a difficulty already getting the transformers,
Yeah, and everything's on back order.
yeah, for a year now.
No,
But a $300,000 cushion doesn't seem.
Yeah.
Like much.
making it bigger. Okay. Mayor and city council comments. I don't see your report.
Oh, I didn't give it time for it, but I have them.
You do, we would
All
love to hear
right,
it.
sorry, I took it off.
Please do.
I didn't think we'd get to it.
Would that be other matters?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and.
So I emailed out to you this afternoon and have copies on your desk. At the last meeting, I talked about the participating on the CAD board. You want more information? It's meeting once a quarter for a couple hours. We expected to check in with the city of Hood River, so they would report for both Cascade Locks and the city of Hood River at those quarterly meetings. Butch had emailed me, saying he was willing to participate if the council approves, so I don't know how you guys want to move forward on that.
I just noticed that you said the third Thursday in September. I'll be in South Carolina.
I think that those are, you can also attend via Zoom.
Yeah, I'm sure you can, yeah.
Okay, then I can attend it via Zoom.
I mean, so I guess the first question is, yes, essentially it's our turn to have somebody on the board. Do we want to have somebody on board? Because the first thing you tell them, and then I think we have some time to decide who's actually.
I think we should definitely get somebody.
Or we can do it now.
Yes.
Who's interested in it?
I got one.
I have worked with Ms. Said with the Energy Council, so I am familiar with them.
Okay,
I feel like we volunteered.
you look
for a
like
lot
you're
of stuff.
batter up.
Well,
He's retired.
I have resigned from Energy Council, so I'm not on it anymore. So
Okay.
I do have extra time now.
Okay. That consensus of council?
Mhm.
Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Second item, McKay, I presented this earlier about the administering the EDA grant. Where it actually states in our finance policy that they're required to do it. They presented $30,000 fee. I reviewed the scope of work. Part of it was actually overseeing the acquisition of the BPA substation, which at this point is, 3/4 of the way done. So there's no point in charging them for it, and that reduced the cost to $23,000. And again, this expense would come out of the light department. So if you guys want to move forward, sorry, frog in my throat.
Good job on that, Jordan.
Does he get nervous though when we talked about the fact that we don't have enough money in that fund already? And now we're paying things we didn't budget for.
We saved on that.
I can keep doing it, I'm just said that's where our finance policy is, so. And it would make my life a little.
Lower than 30.
Yes. And I think McKay is good either way. If they don't take it, they're fine, if they take it, they'll get it.
I'm glad you negotiated a lower fee. It's in our documents, as you mentioned before, that they need to be finishing this up, and it helps you move forward. So I'm glad. Thank you.
Because it wasn't budgeted, I would like to get your guys' approval before moving forward.
And it was supposed to be paid for out of the grant funds, which we can't.
Typically, yes, but it's not in there. I mean, it was not in the grant funding, it wasn't even budgeted.
And we've had this grant, how long has this been in process?
We've had it awarded almost 2.5 years. This started 6 years ago at this point, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Consensus, how does everyone feel about it?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, I'm glad. Give it to them.
Hood River County Administrator interviews. I don't know if you all knew this, the current administrator put in his resignation a couple months ago. I think his last day is July 31st. They had interviews scheduled for August 1st, but they had an executive session today, I just found out. And they're pushing it back about 5 weeks to get more applicants. So. Does anybody on council want to participate? That's the question for tonight.
Want to, yes, can I? I don't
Can
know.
I?
Yeah.
So it depends on the.
It would probably be an all-day process during the.
So that's the middle of September.
Yeah, probably this point, yeah, early to middle September.
Is it possible to say we'd like to have somebody from council participate, and then when we find the date, we can decide who?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I think when we're working on that, maybe we kind of collaborate on the questions that person can take with them so that we can maybe all be involved, but only one person has to attend.
That
If it's, for some reason it's on the first, I would be willing, but if it's,
The August 1st,
yeah,
yeah, that's not happening. They voted today, it's not.
okay.
So is it consensus to find out a date and then we'll send someone or try and figure out everyone's
I'll
schedule?
let them know to have a seat at the table. though.
If it's prior to the 16th, I can do it. After that, I'm gone.
Okay.
I attended the OCC conference in Pendleton Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday last week. Conference covered several topics, including change management, DEI, energy demands in the Northwest, environmental concerns relating to public works, the PFAS and the copper pipes and all that testing we need to start doing eventually. Urban renewal districts, and then relationship between manager and police chief. That was an interesting discussion. So doesn't pertain to us, but it was interesting. Did a lot of good networking, had dinner with a lot of different city managers, ranging from the lady who's the manager at Seneca, which is 200 people, to the manager at Gresham, which is 110,000 people. So a lot of good networking.
Good job.
The strategic plan, the final steering committee meeting will be Wednesday, July 26th at 6 p.m. here in City Hall and virtually. Amanda from U of O will present the draft to the committee. The committee will review it, tweak it, and then present final results or final draft to council for review and their approval in August. Going kind of back to the rate study, myself, Cable Houston, our lawyer we hired, and owner of Good Light Home Buyers have been working to create a power agreement draft. I did inform Good Life they need to present to council before anything is presented to you guys in terms of the power agreement and signed. They are looking to present here within the next 2 months. So. Accounting clerk, again, still having issues. We had some interviews lined up, we get some people back out. So we have interviews scheduled again for next week. Oh, we're getting there. Community liaison has been out. I have not gotten super great applications from people that are like from Arizona. One gentleman from I know, somebody from Arizona applied for it, yes.
It's hot down there.
It is very.
I want to go out of there.
It's the middle of summer, he's like, I want to go to the.
Yeah.
Cascade box.
One person from the Dalles, I reached out to them, I had not heard back.
But I think your comments about trying to find someone in the community might be our best.
Yes, it's gonna say, yeah, the word of mouth, somebody already here local that, wanted a little part-time job. Well, maybe not little, but part-time job. Fire station door, so on July 13th, the new ambulance was coming back from a medical call, was backing into that first bay door. Door malfunction, came down on the new ambulance, which is fine, doesn't have a scrape on it, it's perfectly fine. That was mine and John's first concern, was the ambulance, it's fine. The door though is totaled. And it needs replaced. I submitted an insurance claim, they've got a quote, so we're waiting here on that. But we're looking at probably 5 to 6 weeks before they can even come out and repair it.
Is the building secure?
Yes, building is secure, yes.
Is that like under, is that possibly a warranty? Is that a defect from the door that they'll be paying for it because it's their fault?
Probably not. We can try, but probably.
Yeah, please try.
It's an insurance claim.
In the packet is the agenda for the LOC conference in October. It's got a lot of overlapping breakout sessions. The mayor asked me to bring this up for council to discuss who all is going and make sure there's good coverage on breakout sessions and everything overlap. And we have time to register. Don't need to have this full conversation tonight, just wanted to bring it to your attention.
And even if there's two council members in one of the sessions, each council member is going to probably hear or learn different things. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but for those of you who are going, take a look at it, what interests you, kind of, and hopefully we can spread everything out.
I don't think the deadline actually registers for September,
Right.
but there's plenty of time.
Just on that topic, one of the things that we talked about during the budget process was the amount of money that we're allocating for these events, and we have limited dollars, and I think that I think that there's some people that I want to make sure everybody gets an equal opportunity to participate, I guess, is my point. I don't want to see the same people continue to go. Not that that's a bad thing, but if other people want to go, I want to make sure that other people have that opportunity.
And I know,
I got a scholarship.
and council member Denise got a scholarship, and I got a scholarship, so I need to call LLC. And then, because Denise and I will share, I thought, because if my dollars for a hotel room can go to someone else, I'd rather have it go to someone else. So 3 of us have scholarships.
For
Did
the
you,
ball conference too.
did you get one?
I didn't apply yet for that one.
Okay, it's past the date. That's okay.
So no,
So 3, so quite a bit's covered.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. The only thing that's not covered on mine is $60, the awards dinner. That's all the city has to pay for me.
that's pretty good investment.
No mileage.
Yeah.
You're
and
not
mileage.
gonna submit mileage.
No, I never submit my.
That is true.
Okay.
Public Works utility truck, this item was budgeted in the reserve. North Side Truck Sales participates in the state's pre-approved price agreement. So in here is a quote to actually buy the truck. For $56,355. Again, like since it is a high amount, we'd like to get council's approval for this truck. And it's about a 6-month wait. So if we order it tomorrow, we wouldn't get it till it's whatever 6 months from now. Yes. And yeah, end of winter, yeah.
Consent.
Give the consent, yeah.
And is this an additional vehicle?
No, so this is replacing the current utility truck we have, which if you have seen it or heard it, it's, you can hear its brakes from across town. It is bad. It should have been replaced 10 years ago.
And we can't, is it possible we can repurpose the bed box from that and move to the new
I
chassis?
don't think so, no. I think we're getting a slightly larger truck.
I got it.
Yeah.
And this is not the same truck that we just paid $9,000 for the turbo.
No, that was, Derek's truck, different truck.
Thanks.
Will we be able to get anything for the old one?
I don't know, we could probably surplus it for a little bit of money, but
Basement part?
yeah, or we could repurpose it or something, yeah. What?
So you just need a consent.
Yes.
How does everyone feel about the truck? Good?
Okay, and then, yeah, so that's the truck itself and the frame, the box is separate. We have to get the quotes for that one. And that would be the box itself plus inside, and that's the other half we budgeted for. A couple things not in the report, in the printed report, the mayor and I talked about this in budget product last couple of meetings. Our work session for the 14th will be an update on the electrical system where that stands.
Staring at me, so I don't forget.
Well, you're directly in front of me, so.
I'll be there.
Yes. Jeremiah now has a new commission set, so I'll be probably meeting with them, saying hi. I think we've talked about doing a joint session between the council and the commission at some point to get that up to speed, as well as discuss the IGA and the electrical project. So that's happening. And that is all I got. Well, I guess one other thing, I know we talked about the charter amendment or any kind of vote for changing taxes. I guess I kind of need an answer from council on how they want to, if they want to.
Say that again.
So we talked about the amendment that Bush brought up earlier, any increase in the rate, tax or charge needs to go to the public. Is that something council wants to attempt to amend?
I would like
To make council's job slightly easier if we need to raise revenue.
I would like to amend, if not to reconfigure it, or at least clarify the verbiage. Some form of amendment needs to happen, because we can't keep coming back to what does this word mean? Interpretation.
Yes.
If it's written in stone, then future council can know how to work out with it. Having a definitions like section where it lists what we as the council considered those things, or not removing one of them, or it's like I understand some of them being on there, but some of them are like, that seems very much like a handcuff.
It's restrictive.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm also, this is only city council I've served on, but from what we heard from our city attorney, this is a highly unusual language to have in our city charter. And it is restrictive, and potentially could put us in a place where we maybe aren't able to make the changes that are necessary to be able to keep our government and city functioning.
Yeah, because of inflation, we're not far off from cutting services. I mean, we don't have a lot of money.
So, and I think if you always are taking this to the voters to make these changes, if they don't understand the rationale behind it, it's easy for people to vote these things down. So I think that's kind of part of our role is to make unpopular decisions. And if we're making, raising taxes and fees to a point where people are not comfortable with it, then they vote us out of our position. So I'm more in favor of trying to, I guess, be more congruent with what is standard best practice for city governments to operate.
We as a local government are required to have a balanced budget. We can't run negative. We can't run at a deficit. So when we run out of money, we're out of money. It doesn't matter if we can't pass something because the voters are like, no, I don't want to increase my tax burden. Then we could have lights services shut down, or like, maybe that might be extreme, but like, there are definitely things the city provides that would
Fire and EMS.
Fire and EMS. They're already struggling.
And we don't have to, we have to provide fire service. We don't have to provide EMS. That is a luxury that the city has decided to provide its residents. EMS is actually the county's responsibility.
I was just gonna say that I'm for clarification. Always being more clear is good. But also just want to point out that the reason that some of the handcuffs are there is so that council does not put something on a bill to our residents that really isn't necessary. I mean, it's there for the safety so that the residents can vote on stuff. Trying to, stay above water and doing electricity and stuff. I mean, obviously we have to do those things. So I don't want to totally give council a blank check and say that they can do whatever they want without having to ask for the voters. So that's the clarification I would like to get.
And I don't want to give us a complete blank check, because there are definitely like taxes should be voted on.
Yeah. Right.
But is there
Taxes,
the
bonds.
taxes? If you want, like, that's the whole reason America's, I think we did like somebody else saying you had to pay tax. But there are some things that are just required
Exactly, yeah.
to, and even if they are superficial in the moment, they could benefit, some things do benefit towns down the line that were done superficially in the past. And I just wanna find a balance there, because right now it's like anything except for a rate is handcuffed, and even in a way where you have to wait basically every 2 years to do it. Because American, average American voting habit is no, like, no one, 50% of the population doesn't vote on things. It's like less than 30% actually votes at any given time, even on like popular presidential elections. So how are we supposed to get a talent without people to get 50% of the population to vote on something that's important? When you can't even get the general nation to do the same thing, which seems.
We need to educate. Councilmember Baker had her hand up.
Yes, I would like to amend, it was our attorney, and I do believe somebody else shared that this was an unusual, very difficult for council to fund their city properly. So I would like, if the city administrator could find some model code, from another city. And then my question to our city administrator is this something that would come before the election this fall or next? When we talk about amending this, what's this process?
No, it wouldn't go on the ballot until November of 24. But if we are gonna do it, we need to start the process now, because it's our charter, like you guys have said, is very gray and vague in multiple areas. As we've seen with this rate, and then the process of filling the vacancy, I think all of it needs to be reviewed to get it as black and white as possible.
And didn't he say, he said, don't quote me about, he said it was modeled after like Oswego.
Yeah.
So I think it would give us time to really kind of go into a lot of its challenges. And I know Councilman Miller brought up some good points about the port. We could maybe tackle that as well.
So does this address,
And
it seems to me
I think-
that if we vote on this in November 24, then we still have to wait to figure out a revenue source after that point.
Correct. Yes, but it would make it easier. We wouldn't have to put every single increase as a vote to the people. So if we needed to raise the EMS fee, that's like $3 or $6 on utility bills, we can raise it $1. I mean, we wouldn't go, up to $50, but.
Yeah.
And there are some things we can put into the vote this year, like if we want to raise revenue. That are like a fee and have people vote on that. To help with EMS. It wouldn't necessarily come into we might be able to get 50%. I mean, it's always worth a shot, but especially when we need it.
We're trying.
Exactly.
Yeah, the example as staff is the system development charges. So like the 45 new homes coming in over here, they pay to connect to our utilities. That is paid by the developer. Not anybody actually living in this town is by the developer. And because we haven't raised our SDC since 2008, we've missed out on hundreds of thousands of dollars. For money that's not even unless, some people buy a lot and build their own house, but for the most part, it's developers who are gonna build, make money, and get the heck out of here. That's all I got.
So, right, so we'll move forward, and I think we hear also possible amendments that might be recommended from our strategic planning team.
Denise, your audio is very choppy. We can't understand you.
We're hearing about every other word.
Would we also hear? Okay, I just want to say, yeah, I'm for it.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Would that be consensus of council?
I will start the research process.
And I say something to that part, to his report that, I think you don't give the voters enough credit. I think they'd be pretty wise to figure out what it is you're trying to do. And, you know, it just requires you informing them and, you know, having a strategic, knock on doors, hey, I've been voted, you know. We really need to vote on this, just explain your position. There's a reason why this is put in place, and because it was explained and people understood it, and there's a reason why if you want to avoid it or change it, then, you know, citizens are smart.
All right, you're done with your.
I am done, yes, thank you.
All right, council comments. Let's start. Councilman Happy.
I'm trying to remember my notes and what I wrote down here, and what else is relevant. So this brought up a good point regarding the web forms, and I think that that's something that we should be discussing because it's communication between our citizens and the city has already been challenging, and we really want to encourage participation. And the fact that our systems are not really supportive of that, it almost disincentivizes people to even participate. And I think that just leads to more resentment and frustration and anger and distrust. And I think it's really important we get that fixed. So number one, we got to get that working. Two, I would like to have a little bit more transparency what those responses are to those people. I don't know that we get, correct me if I'm wrong with my assumption, but I don't believe we're getting too many of those web forms filled out on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I would like to see that as part of our your report that you provide, what kinds of questions were brought up and how those were replied there, you know, who responded and when, you know, when did it come in and when did we respond and what did we say? Because I've seen some comments that have come through and the people are misguided or misinformed, and there has to be some education. And I'd like to know that that is taking place and is handled appropriately, if that makes sense. And also I want to make sure people aren't slipping through the cracks and maybe are bringing things up and we're not hearing about it. And I don't know what my second bullet point here was. But I just really appreciate Russ for coming by and giving us the presentation. I already told you, I felt like it was it's a big request to try to take a complicated subject and explain it to people in a way that they can understand. And I feel like you did a great job with that, which helped us, I think, ask good questions and give you better direction. So appreciate that. And that's all I got.
Councilman Miller.
I would like to thank staff and their work, especially Marilyn. She has to put up doing the minutes of a 2+ hour.
Yeah, she has to listen to all this again later, so yeah.
Over and over.
And if we haven't put her to sleep in the first one, we will put her to sleep. So always like to thank staff. There has been some postings in Facebook about a dog that has been running around the neighborhood freely and attacking other dogs, and even an elderly couple with their dog. The people said they had called animal control and got a response of, oh, we can't do anything. So I think we need to call the sheriff and have him respond to that. I mean, we collect money for the animal control people, the dog licenses for the county, and the county is responsible for animal control here. So also, if you think back, KOA had a OLCC permit that they gave here. It was voted to give it to them, but they were supposed to come here and talk to us. Did they ever get that liquor permit?
We reached out to them, they never got back to us.
So they never got the liquor permit.
I don't know what Kathy did, I'd have to check, I would assume she gave it to them, but I mean.
Because I thought it was under the understanding they had to come here before they got that permit. So I like it.
What was that, an application or permit? It was application for a permit, right?
Yeah, it was an application for OLCC.
So what you're asking is, did we endorse their application or not?
We endorsed, I voted no, the rest of you voted for it, But they were supposed to come back and give us a report of why they wanted it, because the application didn't give that. All right, and like I talked about earlier, Mr. Spoo, I'd like to get a consensus of council to have him appear. So, you know, I need all, or at least 4 of us to say, hey, we want Mr. Spoo to come here, because I have some real serious questions about why he's asking for these conditional use permits and his reasoning behind it. He's doing nothing but delaying a well-needed project. And since he is new to our, or fairly new to our planning, I would like to have some questions for him. So if I could ask for consensus of the council. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
What was the rationale for the canoe club to get a conditional permit?
Well, that was a change of function for that building. It was a brewery and now it's a clubhouse.
How is that any different?
Well, it was a restaurant. It is a restaurant.
Well,
I mean,
so the port is zoned public and it has pre-approved functions in that zone. A restaurant is not one of them. The cafe should have gone through a CUP, but did not. So now Ixtapa is going through.
But from what I understand of what he's asking for, it didn't make sense to me. So I would like to clarify it.
Can Kathy clarify that or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can ask Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
But if we have a consensus to get Mr. Spoo here, let's go right to the source.
what's the cost difference?
Is there any cost to have him on Zoom?
Oh, they charge us for every second, every second.
I would imagine Ms. Woosley has a wonderful knowledge of zoning and zoning regulations. My understanding is that it's very black and white.
I would trust Kathy to ask the questions. And you might want to make sure you give your questions to Kathy so that she,
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
No.
send them to me and I'll send them to Kathy.
Yeah,
and-
and the next LOC Small Cities meeting is September 14th, that's in Mosier.
Nah, it's coming up very.
Closer.
It's not locked in yet.
That's
All right, and that's it.
Right. Thank you for the electrical rate study. I sort of felt like I was back in college in a calculus class, but you were a pretty good teacher. I understood what you were trying to get across, so. Yeah. I met with, I think Chrissy, what's her last name? Reeves, thank you. The Hood River County School District in front of the school about, beautification there, what they can do. A big problem is getting water up to that area. But we spoke for quite a while, came up with some ideas, and so she's gonna bring the conversation back to the board. Also, PTO is doing a school beautification closer to the actual school building, and they're doing work sessions coming up, I believe, in August, which are open to residents. If anyone wants to bring a shovel or help them out, you can just go on their page for PTO and you'll get the dates on there. I'm sorry, I don't have them here. I went to the pony party. It was nice. It was a little bit more of a turnout than last year. It was nice to see some counselors and port representatives attending. And lastly, just a reminder that August 1st is National Night Out. Bring your families down to the fire station and thank them for everything that they've been doing for us.
Yeah. Councilmember Keller?
Again, to echo the pony party thoughts, it was a fun event. We have received an email about the development on Windsong about dust. And after that email, I took a look at my house and it's a disaster zone. So I don't know what we can do to mitigate the dust as we heat up in the next month or so. and their water usage to keep it down. I was wondering, why can't we have the email addresses listed on the website, and why do people have to fill out a form? Put the council email address, my email address, whatever, and if we get spam mail, that's Radcom's job to filter that out, and we can click unsubscribe. If that's the concern, I don't know, it just seems like a terrible process as a citizen. I will take any feedback on the funds request form. We've already received a little bit. You can just call me or text me or email me, whatever. There. I wanted to check out on the salary schedule and the 4-day work week and see where we were headed in that department. And I was curious how we could update the planning codes to differentiate between food carts and the vendors. It really seems like the vendors are taking over the streets, and food carts would be a wonderful opportunity for local business. And then thank you to Mr. Schneider, thank you to the staff. I was Mr. Miller talking about Ms. Pace watching our meetings and listening, and I wondered how bored we all get. I can't imagine doing it twice, so thank you.
I just had a question. Where did you get the email about the dust?
It was in one of the citizen. Mr.
Jordan
said
sent
I
us
got
all
like
of
10 of them.
Oh,
They were all attachments.
As always, I want to thank staff. You do a lot. I can't imagine working your full day and then coming over here and listening to this, and then first thing the next day, doing it all over it. And I want to thank you. I can't remember your name, sorry.
Yes.
Regis Schneider, about all your valuable information. And I think we're going in the right direction with this rate study, and it will help our town exponentially. And I agree that we do need to, Mr. Keller, go over some of our planning ordinances, see, especially like some that are relating to the food cart and vendor and other various ordinances that we have that are no longer advantageous to us as a city trying to grow and be in, like, keep up in 2023 and 2024.
That's it. All right, Councilmember Denise.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can anybody hear me?
You can't hear us currently.
Can you hear, you can't hear us? Oh.
Next meeting.
Is it Zoom? Can you put it back on where she can see everybody? Everybody can shake their head or something?
She's not on Zoom. She's on phone.
No, she's on. She's.
She's called in.
She called in on.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You have to stop the presentation.
You did.
Oh,
I don't know why.
if you're on the second monitor.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yay! I just like to say thank you for stuff. Thank you, Russ Schneider. I understand better, and I do, as Councilmember Happy said, I feel better about how to meet this need. That sounds so great as the total. I want to say that yes, you heard that I did apply for and receive a scholarship for lodging and registration for the OLCC conference. And I encourage anybody, I know other council members have received them in the past and this time as well. If you're interested in going, that's a great thing. I wanted to follow up on the planning that was mentioned. I did go to the last planning session with
Kathy was there, and they did discuss a lot about some code changes, food cart as well. I didn't hear what next steps were, but this also the idea of making the ADU planning more friendly. I know that one of our planning commissioners, Bernard's, mentioned he was so happy that he built an ADU, and I'm hoping that there's consensus of this council that I might check in with Ann Kelly, who is a city planner, I think, I'm not sure, on this grant that might be available because it's due. Is there anybody against my checking in with her and the planning commission on the grant for housing? I wouldn't move forward without, of course, Kathy Woosley, or it might be too late if it's due end of July, but it sounds like a lot. Anybody saying that? And then I want to ask about last
Denise?
meeting, we said it. City staff. Yeah,
You're choppy again, we can't understand you.
last meeting, we said that, oops, sorry, city council would give committee members guidance. Has that happened?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. And I wanted to thank you, Jordan, the administrator, for negotiating the fees lower for managing the grant as per our documents. So I appreciate that, and that helps us a lot. And I want to say I'm getting a lot of the Main Street now. Recent conference that I didn't go to, very recent, and I'm going to give you more update on that.
Denise, we can't,
we're hearing
every other word. I think.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. It's hard when you have bad.
Thanks on that.
Yeah.
There's a great YouTube video, conference calls in real life.
Yeah. All right, well, I want to certainly thank the city staff of Maryland. It is what everyone has said, like you hear and you relive it. Probably listen to it more than a few times. Appreciate everyone attending the meeting as well. Russ, thank you so much for your presentation. You did well getting a lot of information to where it was easier to understand. Let me see. Thank you, Councilor Keller, for coming up with the forum, and everyone just kind of email them or text them on what your ads or takeaways for that. Appreciate everyone's input. Speaking with Chief Logan, they have had how many calls so months? They're just been crazy busy, so I'm really appreciative of them and the whole team over there.
They had 7 this weekend.
And how many total for the month? It's
A lot.
crazy amount. So really, really appreciative of them, and they're working very, very hard. And then the museum event, the pony party, it was good. When you volunteered, it was nice to see so many people. They're welcome to the new commissioners, and everyone's voted in, and Jeremiah's doing a good job, and so welcome all of them. Thank you for the reminder about the Mosier, the LOC meeting. Happy to hear that it's in Mosier. And then also the ads or the posts I see for everyone's who's picking up trash. Councilman Farrell even had a bonus on one of her pickups. And picking up trash that day, but really, really appreciate it. And it looks like a very much an awesome community event. I mean, people with trucks, and everyone is just pitching in and really cleaning up. So I really appreciate that. I know we talk about a lot of different things. We're talking about the Kellys. Thank you for to the Kellys for coming. And it sounds like we're always, and I know we're new, and we're in 7th month, but we have, topics like ordinances and ADUs and food trucks and everything. So we've got to come up with, okay, here's this challenge, and then that we gotta take care of it, what are the next steps? So that's kind of what I'm seeing. We have, everyone could maybe email Jordan, or what's your thoughts on that, to like, okay, here's our concerns, and then it's like, you know, how do you. I don't wanna say eat an elephant one bite at a time, because nobody wants to eat an elephant, but how do we actually take actions, because we have to have steps in order to address the ADUs. They brought up a lot of good points on that. And then also, I mean, just all, Councilman Miller brought up good points about the port and the food trucks and everything. So does that sound reasonable? And then we can come up with a list that we agree, and then let's just start taking care of the list. Does that sound?
I know we need to
doable,
come up,
or-
we need to come up with a list on what we would like to put on a voting ballot. I know we need to do that.
Okay,
Because I know Kathy Woosley had mentioned,
Right.
well, let's get them all the changes that we
Right.
want, you know.
right, because there's so many.
See, and I
I
also
don't know,
feel like that.
gotta figure out a plan of action.
But I feel like that's also part of the reason why we set goals at the beginning of the year.
Right,
And why we're going to a strategic plan,
right,
because it's easy to get distracted by
right,
these other things that are
Right.
maybe not a priority, but they take a lot of resources.
Right.
So I think we have to be careful about, you know, one, being receptive to feedback,
right,
but we can't necessarily take action on every single piece of thing that, you know, comes to
Right.
us. And so I feel like that's kind of our job at the year, is setting our priorities.
right. I know, what Councilman Miller brought up, that's a little bit time sensitive, you know, so something like that, but maybe with our strategic plan. Let's come up with how are we gonna address these issues, challenges? Let's say issues. And then the 4-day work week, I know that's been brought up, and so we need to figure out. What are your comments on that?
I'm gonna propose it at the next council.
Okay,
Research, want to do a 6-month trial run starting October 2nd. So that would give us plenty of time to get it out to the community, about a month and a half, do a 6-month trial.
okay,
This,
so there's a plan,
there is a plan,
All right.
Saturday schedule is taking a little more time.
Oh, yeah,
Waiting
that's
for,
huge.
yes, that's a
Right.
big project. And then, since I'm on a roll here, the council emails is exactly like you said, it is concern of spam or robots or whatever is doing their thing. But yes, RadComp should be able to do that, so we can easily get them actually listed on the website if that's what council. It's not that hard to do.
is it consensus of council to have sort of email on the website?
Shouldn't have no problem with it.
So it's good,
The only thing I see not doing a group is that whoever gets the email, if only one counselor gets it, please bring it forward so that, and share it, you know, but other than that.
I'll double check with RadComp and make sure they're okay with it because they are IT people, but.
But if you bring it forward to share it, do not comment on it, because then you gotta change
Just
right,
the meeting.
just blind CC.
okay, and then last but not least, LOC, for those of you who have not registered or maybe would like to. Sorry, I'm looking at you, Tim. So anyway, and then pick out any, you know, see what you wanna, what you're interested in, I'm going, and that's it. Motion to adjourn,
Move to adjourn.
second,
Second.
do we need to do a roll call vote? Yeah,
Well, I could just go.
yeah, okay, all right.
All in favor?
All right,
I'm.
all right, thank you.
Bye.
If you go by
Thank
and
you.
work, it's better before I can go down to Eugene.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you do.
You need to put it in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Russ.
All right.
And then over to